It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You could find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting just by emailing me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. So let me say that one more time. If you want to hire me as a PI, you go to oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Don't contact me all the other places, Twitter and Facebook, all those places. oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com if you want to hire me. If you like the show, be sure and check out our Patreon. Patreon right now has the best search engine to find the old contents. We're all kind of shadow banned all over the place on YouTube and Twitter and everything. You Google, it's very hard to find the old shows, the old content, but Patreon has the best working search engine right now that I can find to find old shows. Plus, we put up new content every single day. All the stuff you hear Monday to Friday, AM/FM radio, you can find over there at the Opperman Report Patreon. Today, we're doing a show about Danny Casolaro and the Octopus. I got 3 hours up there with Bill Hamilton, who's at the center of that story. Plus, I promise you, I'm going to put up all those documents that Bill Hamilton sent me. All that stuff that I haven't seen anywhere else that we got to get out there to you as soon as I get my act together here. The archives are at Spreaker.com. Friday night, 8 p.m. I do a live show every Friday night, 8 p.m. at Spreaker.com. There's a chat room. You get an email notification when we put up new content. Did a couple more shows up there about the Octopus with Jeremy Kazimarov, and also two with Ted Rubenstein, okay, was a legendary figure in these kind of topics here. But today we have Melanie L. Carlson. You could find her at melanielcarlson.com. She's got a Substack. We really need your support over there at mx.defying at Substack. She's got a Twitter, mx__defying, and also TikTok. MX__defying, DEFYING. So Melanie L. Carlson, we're going to be talking about her article in Covert Action magazine called MCA, Shining the Spotlight on the Octopus's Hollywood Tentacles. So Melanie L. Carlson, are you there?
Yes, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And we've been having such a great conversation before we even got started. So I'm really looking forward to this show. Before we get into the Octopus and Danny Casolaro and all that stuff, tell us, who is Melanie L. Carlson?
Yeah, so I'm a trained social worker. I have my master's in social work. And I spent a lot of time working in the field of domestic and sexual violence. And I spent 5.5 years in a PhD program and fizzled out. And so during that time, the Free Britney movement started. So I started looking into that from a family violence, mental health stigma perspective, and then I quickly started identifying so many suspicious things about her case, lots of tax evasion charges and mafia associates, and being her security being a part of the Mossad. And so quickly I realized that this wasn't merely a case of a low-class family commandeering a internationally known pop star's life, but it was really orchestrated by the billionaire class because they felt she was too famous to quit. And so in that investigation, I identified that Live Nation Ticketmaster was the heart of her conservatorship and the monetization of it. Her manager merged his company with Live Nation the same year they merged with Ticketmaster. They did, of course, her promotion and ticketing and partnered with Caesars for her Vegas residency. And then that resulted in me looking into MCA, which in so many ways, Live Nation Ticketmaster is just the transformed version of a contemporary MCA. And so when the Octopus murders came out, I thought it was very unusual that MCA was not to be found in the filmmaker's construction of the narrative.
Had you been researching the Octopus and Danny Casolaro before Netflix?
No, he had come up, but yeah, I did not.
Gotcha. Okay, so then this is fascinating. Okay, so then you just came. This is really interesting then. Okay, so you come to this fresh. Okay, coming into this fresh, and you have all this research on MCA and Frank Valenti, or Jack Valenti, okay, which is a real character. All these guys, these characters, man, and the corruption in the music industry. So then why don't we start with this? Then what is, people who know the Danny Castellaro story and listen to my shows with Bill Hamilton, he was investigating the Promise software and Inslaw, the theft of that software. There was a backdoor in it that was allowing espionage agencies around the world to sneak in these backdoors and get blackmail dirt on people, basically. It was used in international banking. They could see where people were sending their money offshore. And they could even steal that money from if they wanted to. So imagine this power it gave people. And Danny was looking into this and a lot of different things, and he winds up dead in his hotel room with very suspicious suicidal wounds all over his body and blood splattered all over the walls. It's just insane the way, possibly a suicide. It could have been a suicide. We're not going to get into that one. But just this crazy story there with Danny Castellaro and Octopus. But now, where do you come in with your corruption in the music industry into this?
Yeah, so I was familiar with Thomas Gates, who's featured in the documentary and spoke with the filmmakers. He was also involved in the investigations into MCA, as well as this other U.S. prosecutor, Richard Stavin. And so and Sherry Seymour, all of them were in this documentary I had previously watched called Wages of Spin to Bring Down the Wall. So there was a first version that was about the payola scheme of the 1950s. And really, when they were going after payola then, it was really kind of a Trojan horse for them to initiate going after the mafia. And that kind of fell dead on arrival. And so I thought it was very unusual because I have a whole connection map that's linked on my profile. Huge. It's got everyone on there because I quickly identified Irving Azoff, who was running MCA Records under investigation by the DOJ and FBI in the 80s. And I was like, how did he get out of that DOJ investigation, which was shut down from the top by Attorney General Edwin Meese? So that was just kind of like, a bright light always shining on my research. Why did that get shut down? Why did Irving become untouchable to this day, right? So then through the omission of MCA in the Octopus Murders docuseries is when I was like, okay. So in a lot of ways, it was like a great puzzle piece for my own investigation. But clearly, I found their omissions questionable, whether that be them not being good researchers or some kind of misdirection they fell to. I'm not sure.
Well, the research is out there. You know what I mean? I don't know how much of an omission there could be. And Bill Hamilton was sending these documents, the same ones I have, all over the place to a lot of different people. So I don't know how. The idea that Castellaro might have been a suicide when there was one of the NSA agents that he was meeting with was found beaten to death in the backseat of his own car at the airport. I don't think that was a suicide. That wasn't included in this documentary. So there's a lot of stuff here.
Right. And the thing with Danny, I 99.9% believe it was a murder. And the thing is Thomas Gates, the FBI guy investigating MCA as well, he told him that Danny had told him he just found out some big puzzle piece that was going to solve the case, and it had to do with MCA, And so that is a really weird omission.
So then what is the MCA involvement in all this?
Oh, I mean...
And the history going back. What is the history of MCA and MCA's involvement in this? And I guess, drug dealing, money laundering, all kind of stuff.
Yeah, you really have to go back to Al Capone, Chicago. MCA Music Corporation of America was started by Jules Stein, and they were, booking acts for the speakeasies during Prohibition. And a lot of people underestimate the impact and influence that the money made during Prohibition through the, dark market has on the power structure today. Okay, so Jules ends up moving out to L.A. He brings in Lou Wasserman, who was mobbed up with the Cleveland people by way of the Chicago outfit. And that's another thing. They were called the Octopus. Dan Robia in his book Dark Victory, Reagan, about Ronald Reagan and his rise to power, the mafia, And so it was called the Octopus, MCA, in the early 20th century. So that's another weird omission. And apparently it was like a common descriptor for extensive power networks. So, Lou Wasserman, ended up being head of MCA, was Ronald Reagan's talent agent. And then as Ronald Reagan's acting career was fizzling out, he became head of the Screen Actors Guild. Now, during the Red Scare, Ronald Reagan acted as a FBI informant on other people in Hollywood. And so he already had that tap into the political network. Then, as MCA wanted to go into TV production, Ronald Reagan gave them a waiver to do that, whereas other talent agencies could not go into production because it is an essential conflict of interest to have your management and union workers under the same umbrella.
Yeah, your manager would be your boss. That's okay.
Exactly. And that's actually what we see today, right? Like Live Nation manages 500 of the world's biggest acts. So then, they just get so huge. And then when JFK comes into power and his brother is running the DOJ, they file an antitrust case against MCA. So it was a backdoor deal. We don't know anything exactly about those negotiations. They immediately dissolved their talent agency, which was actually, bringing in the least money, so they could continue production. But they also bought Decca Records and Universal Pictures. Okay, so they get in trouble with antitrust, but then they're also, extending out their tentacles as well. So, oh gosh, it's so big. Decca becomes MCA Records, and they just continue to be one of the biggest conglomerates in U.S. history, really, in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, kind of like William Morris Endeavor is now today. I would encourage everybody, though, to go to covertactionmagazine.com and check out the MCA shining the spotlight on the Octopus's Hollywood Tentacle. Because even if we did 3 or 4 shows with Melanie L. Carlson, we're not going to cover everything in this. Like, the article is like a book. Okay, there's a lot of content in this article. How does Jack Valenti fit into all this? Because this guy was a real character.
Oh, yeah. So Jack Valenti was a close confidant of LBJ. And then, so JFK dies 1963. LBJ takes charge. Wasserman is close with LBJ, but also, so Wasserman brings Jack Valenti from D.C. to Hollywood and puts him in charge of the Motion Picture Association of America, the biggest, industry trade advocacy organization. And it's wild because Robert Booth Nichols met with Jack Valenti to pitch screenplays and such. So it's not just it's not even 1 degree of separation with a lot of these characters.
Well, there's people out there doing research that swear that they see Jack Valenti in Dallas on the day of the assassination. Okay, so and I would not be surprised. And the guy was a serious shady character.
Right, and a lot of these moves came with Wasserman, Tex Thornton, and we can get into that in a second. Right after LBJ comes to power, it was just lined up, right? 5 moves in advance.
Gotcha. Then who was Lytton, Tex Thornton?
Ted Thornton, he started out in Texas politics with LBJ going all the way back. And when he was first getting into the defense industry, he actually went to JFK's dad and was like, will you fund my business? And he was like, I don't want to get into that. So then he worked with Howard Hughes, and he ended up, buying a microwave company. So his ultimate company was named, it's Litton Industries. Sorry, I've only read it, and then I watched this video about it. It's Litton Industries. And so then, right when the MCA has to dissolve their talent agency in 1962, they sell their fancy Beverly Hills headquarters to Litton Industries. There was a lot of negotiation over a couple of years to get that done. But it's not sold for cash. It's sold to Jules Stein for Litton stock, right? And so that's how I got in. That sale is exactly how I tied Danny's Octopus to what I was already doing.
Okay, and what's that connection?
So what did I do? I can't remember exactly why I went there. But then after I looked at that sale, I just Googled Casolaro and Litton. And then his dad's obituary came up, and I was like, what is this? Danny
Casolaro's the dad, the doctor.
Yeah. And I had thought he was a gynecologist, and there's just no way that was his only job.
Well, then, tell us more about his father, the doctor, Casolaro.
Yeah, so in his obituary, it said he was the founder of what would ultimately become Litton Bionetics. So he was a medical doctor. I mean, I haven't even dug it. I mean, it's just going to be a goldmine for more people to dig as well. In the 1950s, his dad was doing the primate studies to assess, outer space travel on the impact of, G-forces or whatever on primates. And then his dad was very involved in animal testing. And so Litton Bionetics actually started as studying cancer and such in primates, and then they would induce it in primates, right? So it ended up being very tied to MK Naomi and biowarfare research, and his Bionetics had contracts with the Army Biowarfare Department or something akin to that, and his dad's company is actually why Agent Orange got banned, because really it's a bioweapon. There's no doubt about that. So that is something I would think Danny knew about. So it's just like all these different ways his dad is tied to these entities that Danny was looking into, and there's just no way that Danny didn't have a lot of well-placed sources than people even know about at this point.
Yeah, I think people even close to him don't even know about. But now the thing is that Danny Casolaro's father, Dr. Casolaro, was involved in this Litton company, and it says in Daniel Casolaro's own handwriting, there's handwritten notes where he says Litton dash Arizona dash. So he was aware of all this, and there was even some discussion too that the Litton Industries was going to develop night vision goggles and things like that for sale in Nicaragua?
Yeah, so it's mentioned that the actual goggles, I think a lot more transactions went on at Wackenhut Cabazon joint partnership than we even know about now. But yeah, that was part of them wanting to assemble the night vision goggles. And I mean, can you get any more innocuous than night vision goggles, right? Like what else? I looked through the Litton catalog, and there's some other things that may have been going on there as well. But then also in the BCCI Senate report, they also talk about Litton sniping the goggles. And I was like, that's weird. And I think that was perhaps having to do with, it was a South American country. I'm not sure what.
Guatemala.
So,
I'm looking at your article right now.
Yeah, so that's weird. They would both come up twice, right?
Did you ever see that document? It's been in Covert Action magazine. It's a scanned document of William Weld when he was working for the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, and they talk about him selling these the Octopus, the Inslaw Promise software in Saudi Arabia through people like Adnan Khashoggi and going through BCCI and Credit Suisse and walking the transaction through Credit Suisse like you did before. What the hell, first of all, was the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department selling this software through Swiss bank accounts? But it's all there right in your freaking face, man.
Yeah, I have not seen that document. I would love to see it.
I'll send it to you. It kind of got scrubbed off. Ted Rubenstein found it. He sent it to me. Then we couldn't find it again. It got scrubbed off the internet until we see it now again. It's up on the Covert Action magazine, and now it's back in circulation. So
yeah, I mean, there's things in my Britney investigation I would find and share, because I would just share in real time, right? Because I thought, I'll build a network of crowdsourcing research because of the implications today and evil people having a lot of money and power. I mean, we should try to address this as quickly as possible. And things would get scrubbed and everybody like, what? This doesn't see.
Stuff in the entertainment industry gets scrubbed, man. We've had lawsuits, and there's articles in Vanity, Variety, that get removed after the lawsuit is settled. So these guys got juice, man, and they got power to get to the celebrity stuff. And the guys, we mentioned off the air that certain PI with the C4 explosives, that fellow there. Oh, by the way, was CIA and had his own device that he could wiretap into people's phones remotely without attaching any extra equipment onto the phone lines. Fascinating character there, right?
Right, and Harvey Levin of TMZ really took over where, oh gosh, you said his name, and
Pelicano?
Pelicano, yeah, he really took over Pelicano's operation once he went to prison.
Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that. But we had, I've had like Paul Baresi on the show who worked for Pelicano, and what's his name, Dano Hanks and Mark Ebner, all those guys, they all work directly with Pelicano. Okay, now then it comes, so BCCI is involved in all this, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Somehow, I didn't dig too deep into that, but and there was a savings and loan crisis, right, that Danny was somehow investigating, and then his dad was on the board of some savings and loan bank, and I was like, what? So it was, and his dad was like, had computer businesses, data processing, and so it's like, how likely would Danny just happen, to start writing for like Computer World or be into computers before, there's no home computers then, they're very expensive.
That's so interesting you mentioned that now, because I remember when I was talking to Bill Hamilton, I says, well, how did Danny Casolaro become interested in this software? Did he have expertise in this software area?
Yeah. Well, and even like I did a quick search in the FBI reading room. Wait, there's a CIA's reading, whatever, the FBI FOIA. And then Danny pops up, and someone reported him concerned that he had classified documents in the 70s, right? So he was already on somebody's radar having to do with something, and he called in to the FBI about the DNC having prior knowledge of the Watergate break-in. But his dad, I thought, was really sweet, followed up. It was like, my son has this information. Will you please help him to the FBI?
Wait, Danny Casolaro called the FBI about information about the Watergate break-in?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had no idea.
Yeah. I wrote other things on my Substack, and it was so much information, I was pounding it out. So I synthesized what I already had for Covert Action magazine, but it's all very strange. And his there's a million, the Octopus.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because you talk about the Senate investigation here with the run by John Kerry, and how he's looking into all this BCCI corruption, when meanwhile, his son was partners with Hunter Biden in their operation, running around the world with their hands out asking for money.
Yeah, I just want to know who people really work for. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what do you really stand for?
I hear you, man. I hear you. Oh, God. Okay, let's see here. Scrolling down here. Oh, Sal the Swindler Pacello. What do you have about that?
So, Sal is mobbed up with the Gambino crime family. And people thought it was really unusual that he just came into MCA and had free range of the place. And he was already on, I believe it's Richard Stebbins' radar, because he already had investigated him for other things when he was out in Vegas. And so there was this anonymous letter that was sent to a few people that was like, Wasserman wanted Sal to kill his daughter's boyfriend, so he gave him free range of MCA to keep Irving Azoff quiet. Wasserman bought two of Irving's companies. So, and that ties into, I believe Irving Azoff was a federal informant. And, the crumbling of the five families of New York feels very tied into all of this, but it's beyond kind of me being able to methodically prove.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the bringing down the five families is basically Giuliani, went after the certain families and not as many as others. But right around the same time, 1986, when all this was going on here with the Sal the Swindler Pacello and the music industry, that's when Al Sharpton, the Reverend Al Sharpton, was running around working as an FBI informant, taping these very guys. He was recording against these very guys in the music industry and making cases against them for the FBI as a full-time FBI asset. And this was also the time too that Iran-Contra coke was coming up to New York and going through Salvatore Reale through John Gotti and being sold through John Gotti. So it all connects.
Yeah, and so this is the wildest thing. Apparently there was I did talk to Sherry Seymour. I found her, and she had communicated on her website that she is trying to get the sealed documents from the DOJ investigation. Now, it was shut down because the head of the home video division of MCA, Universal Pictures, he was on wiretap saying he would get Edwin Meese to shut it down. And then click, it's off. And so it seems, and Gene Quinto was on the board of Meridian Logistics with Robert Bruce Nichols. And so it seems that given MCA's offices being stationed around the world and seems like very strategic, city central places, they were acting as a front for whatever kind of illicit goods were being trafficked.
And we kind of see it going on to this day with Puffy Combs, and same operations, blackmail, drugs.
Well, if you look, we're very excited in my community about Diddy because we've been knowing about him. And it's very strange. It was widely known, especially in the black community, that he was a prolific predator, but he was untouchable. And, but he's very tapped in to that Live Nation network, Irving Azoff. Irving and Diddy and the Playboy Mansion were right in the same little street together, basically. And across the street from Irving is the facility where Britney was held against her will. Now, we know that Hefner was mic'd and cammed up all over the Playboy Mansion. So it seems like that is the central location in Holmby Hills in California where a lot of this was happening. Or, it just feels very clear to me.
Did you happen to catch the Jonathan Odie interrogation on YouTube?
No.
Oh, my God. This is the greatest story of the world. Jonathan Odie went into Trump golf course in Miami and shot the joint up, got into a shootout with the cops in there, puts up a big American flag in there and stuff like that. He's a male stripper who worked for this place called a Dancing Bear, okay, that had connections to the Pulse nightclub shooting, too, as well. And this guy gets shot up. Okay, but he's such a tough guy. He's there in his hospital gown being interviewed by the U.S. Secret Service, just talking like nothing just happened, but he's guy's full of bullet holes. And he starts talking about P. Diddy and Cassie and all that stuff, all those allegations and the payoffs and the drug smuggling and all that kind of stuff and the sexual abuse and recording people and hiring men to come in and have sex with his girlfriends and stuff like that. He's talking about all this stuff before any of this was on the news, before the Cassie lawsuit. He settles his own lawsuit with Puff Daddy because he comes into all this freaking money out of nowhere. Okay. And now his case has been going on for years and years and years and years and years with no disposition in his case. So clearly, and, if the Secret Service comes in and they interview a guy and he starts talking about drug traffic and all this kind of stuff, they have to do the paperwork and follow up on that. So clearly this guy's is an informant now at this point, and then that's making all these cases against all these guys. I'll send you the video. It's a great story, man.
Yeah, and South Florida, man, that was like the capital of the CIA. Lots of interesting things and connections going on there. And so what I like about the Lil Rod lawsuit is this is the thing, like, it's not blackmail if it's not stigmatized, right? So I really don't care if people use drugs or have affairs or whatever. I care about predators and, the big movers and shakers, because at the end of the day, the sex workers are the ones who tend to take the fall. So I do like he admitted, like, I woke up with I believe he said I woke up with like a minor next to me and I had no idea. I didn't even know what happened, right? So how unaware are people when they get blackmailed, right? Yeah. So I think in certain circumstances people, have a type and people cater to their perversions, but in other cases I feel that they're completely set up. And that's what I've seen with like TMZ, like how they set up people, if you follow the pattern.
Wait, now who are you saying woke up next to a minor?
Lil Rod. He was the lawsuit that came after Cassie's lawsuit.
Okay, no, I wasn't aware.
He's a producer. He's a producer that traveled around with Diddy for maybe a year or two. And the thing is like the business manager that was in charge of Britney's conservatorship, her underling, Robin Greenhill of TriStar Sports and Entertainment, is named in that lawsuit as being the one who was wiring funds to the sex workers.
Wow.
So it is all connected. It's been very, very slow for us to build the momentum from the little corner of investigators I come from.
Yeah, those are some really interesting. There's connections too between Trump and P. Diddy and stuff like that, and of course Trump and Epstein all over the place. And Trump,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and also Trump and R. Kelly. R. Kelly, when he was holding those little kids in cages, dog cages, in his Trump Tower apartment in Chicago, his publicist is that woman who's a co-defendant over there in Atlanta, the one that was threatening to kidnap one of the poll workers. Yeah. And she was actively R. Kelly's publicist at the time he had those kids in cages.
And R. Kelly's on Jive, which was Britney's label too.
Oh, really?
And there's all this weird stuff like following the paper. It's too much for me, right? But same business addresses of Luke Perlman, boy who did the NSYNC Backstreet Boys. I think they were both on Jive as well, and he's using the same registered agent as Eric Prince and Trump, and it's just too much.
Wait a minute, Luke Perlman was using the same registered agent as Eric Prince?
Yeah, but there's it's one of those, one-stop shop, and
Right, okay.
like everyone's in Delaware now. But once those Florida Sunshine Laws came out, right? And so with Lou Pearlman, the weird thing about him is that he was caught in he was prosecuted for one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in all of history. But before that, he had thousands of complaints against him for running a talent scout kind of business. Here, come get your headshots, whatever. And he was just stealing people's money. But I think, he was running that con. The Attorney General at the time, Charlie Crist, refused to prosecute him, strangely, right? And so not only do I think he was able to carte blanche run a crime because he was somehow cooperating with the feds in some way, but also, there's weird things coming out of Disney and Nickelodeon and all of that.
Yeah, I'm sure Lou Pearlman had a ton of blackmail dirt with those little boys that he was representing. And he got into that because he was a private, he was renting out private jets, which is another industry that these guys are all connected to, man, with the drugs and the trafficking of humans. Real quick, though, to back up, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when you talked about how these guys get set up, I had Richard Kerr on this show, who was part of the Concora School for Boys over there in Europe, in Ireland, and with MI6 and stuff like that. And he was trafficked by Roy Cohen. And he told me, there's pictures of this guy. This kid comes from an orphanage, and he's traveling all around Europe in this little suit. How's he getting around? But he said one of the things they would do to him, they had this hotel where it was used for blackmail and stuff like that. And if there was a politician getting off the elevator, he would walk up next to him and hold his hand, and they would take a picture of it. The guy had no connection to this, Richard Kerr, but they had the picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at how Donald Sterling lost his NBA team, it's wild. And TMZ got that exclusive when he was saying racist things that his girlfriend recorded, and it's strange things all over the map.
Yeah, it really is, man. It's just so overwhelming, because everybody's got their little piece of the pie, and
yeah, and that's why I think, you know what, I don't care if you have orgies, you do blow, whatever it is, I do not care. I care about the crimes, and that's the thing. That's part of, dismantling purity culture. It's not just, upright morality. It's about, getting the most prolific and dangerous abusers down. So even with Harvey Weinstein, that story has not been told. Mm. He was mobbed up from the beginning. He started out in concert promotion in Buffalo. You got him with OJ there, and OJ's tied to the mafia and somehow and other things. And, Weinstein owed Glenn Blavatnik, who owns Warner Music Group, $40 million when he went down. He hired ex-Mossad to stalk Ronan Farrow and the accusers of Weinstein. That's weird, but Len Blavatnik both funded, Weinstein movies and Steve Bannon, right? So who's on whose team here,
Wait, they funded Steve Bannon's movie career too?
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve Bannon, who was best friends with Epstein.
Yeah. And so Len Blavatnik, he's a Soviet oligarch, right? Access Industries, aluminum, when the fall of the Soviet Union. You know what I mean? So it's like, the American empire isn't American, really, And with Weinstein, you're starting to see, it feels, that's another huge story, right? But that feels like a total cover-up. Because he wasn't, excuse me, he wasn't just casting couch and a serial predator. No, it was a whole network. It was a whole system. And Julianne Armand, I believe, she filed a lawsuit this past January that her talent agency, CAA, in conjunction with Weinstein, worked to traffic her, right? And we have another lawsuit that just came out where Oakview Group owned by Irving. He also has the Azov Company that somehow James Dolan of MSG, Madison Square Garden, and Irving worked together to traffic someone from Tennessee to California, and then they tried to farm her out to Weinstein. So we're seeing all these cases like it's a network, it's a system, it's not just a casting couch. It's really human trafficking.
Yeah, and human trafficking, sex trafficking seems to be a huge component to all this, and it goes right in hand with the blackmail.
Yeah, and that's why we see so many like pop stars. Either they're born into it, the family, you know, or they're recruited from a very young age and raised in the system, and in those humble backgrounds. So this is what I tell people, like with Brittany, right? You don't think your family would do that to you? Like go along with it? If they're, I really do think people are scared of getting murdered, you know? So putting all the blame on her family will never dismantle the power networks that enable all this prolific abuse to occur while regular people can't pay rent, you know?
Yeah. So
the concentration of power and corruption is just beyond right now, and the people are tired, and they're often blaming the wrong demographics for our real problems, which lie straight at the feet of billionaires.
And to quote Daniel Hopsticker, you know, it's a gangster planet. You know, it's a gangster planet. Mm-hmm. And it really is. And the thing is, too, you know, when you talk about people being afraid of getting murdered, in Hollywood and in that, you know, you talked about blackmail and stuff like that, you know, they got these guys, they got these professional stalkers, these professional fixers, man, who would just, they don't have to kill you. They will just harass the hell out of you, man, until you just give it and say, what do you, I'll do whatever you want, you know? And yeah. They're untouchable. They're just untouchable.
Right. And so even when we see the UCLA pro-Palestinian protests get violently broken up, right? We have Dr. Phil there, it's UCLA, and Aaron Cohen, who's a, you know, Mossad-trained agent, going in and doing, Dr. Phil and him did this special, like how he infiltrated the encampment so the police could go in. And so we have the LAPD. All those people were involved in putting Brittany in a conservatorship, whether that be Dr. Phil acting as a talking head or Aaron Cohen rising up the media narrative that Brittany was in danger of brown men that looked suspicious because they're from the Middle East, you know? And the LAPD was totally in on, like, kidnapping her from her home. I mean, it's all the same network. Here we are, like, 15 years later, you know?
How was Dr. Phil involved?
So what happened, they tried to put her in a hospital twice. And so one of the times he went and met with her, and then he made a statement, and then the family acted like, oh, he didn't have any right to do that. They put Lou Taylor, the business manager of TriStar, on TV, and they're like, oh, what we need now is for America to pray for Brittany. I think she really just wanted to quit, but people in power were like, no, honey, you're too famous to quit. And so they put out that narrative that, oh, every day her dad goes to work as a personal chef. But he was working for Adrienne Maloof. Okay? When the conservatorship was being planned, how are you going to tell me the Maloof family, owners of the Palms Casino, first person Brittany's photographed with after the conservatorship started is George Maloof? How are you going to tell me these billionaires weren't involved? When immediately they're like, oh, we want a Vegas residency, which didn't happen until, you know, 5 years later or so. So, I mean,
that's interesting because Maloof was there when she went married that guy in Vegas.
Yeah, they were staying at the Palms Casino. He's the one who hooked her up with a lawyer.
Well, I think she already had that lawyer, Chestnut.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been involved with a lot of celebs.
Oh, yeah. Well, rightly so. The guy does some really good work. Okay. What else? Because I don't want to get too far off the track here of all this Casolaro stuff. What is this stuff here about? But no, but we're going to have you back about the other things, too. What is it, all this stuff here about bionetics?
Yeah, so Bionetics, so the interesting thing about his dad is, like, they were really one of the first companies to do lab studies of animals. So they had tons of primates, one of the biggest primates facilities ever, and they worked with the NIH. They ended up getting bought by Litton Industries, and then they moved into Fort Detrick in Maryland, under the guise of the National Cancer Institute. I think that's what it's called. And so Fort Detrick is wild because that's where they were, like, developing the shellfish toxin to, like, try to kill Castro, kill Lumumba of the Congo. That's where they're developing all those bioweapons. They really started AIDS research or, gain of function research. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Who knows the truth about that? But, like, you read, like, old stories about people who grew up there, like, people's dad would, like, mysteriously die of anthrax. And there's just a lot of stuff going on there. And Gottlieb was there, who was, running the MK Ultra program after that supposedly shut down. And so his dad was in all of that stuff.
Yeah, people need to understand that
dad,
Danny Castellaro's father, Dr. Castellaro, that you see it, the archival footage, owned this company that she's talking about right now, Biometrics.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's kind of left out.
His dad had two companies that were registered in Martinsburg, West Virginia, where Danny died. And Martinsburg is way closer to Fort Detrick than D.C. Okay? So there were two companies, and they had to do... I need to pull those actual business records, but they're on the Secretary of State of West Virginia's business record search. Like, anyone can go look. So it's just very strange to me. I mean, so, Rakana Shudo had said Danny was worried he had been targeted by bioweapons before he died. And apparently in the postmortem, they found, that he was developing symptoms of multiple sclerosis. But why would Danny be paranoid about bioweapons? Why would that even come up? That wasn't even really discussed in, like, the docuseries. So I found that really strange. Like, he was, and his dad had this strange lawsuit where he lost some eyesight from some hairspray, and, like, his dad, like, studied, like, I don't know. I did a FOIA request of his dad, and the FBI didn't find anything, which is weird. But, at Fort Detrick, they studied, like, using aerosols to, deliver as a mechanism to deliver bioweapons. So, like, that all missing is weird. Like, there's no way Danny only investigated the Octopus for a year when he clearly has a pattern of looking into these more intriguing elements well before. He supposedly started, in 1990 and died in 1991?
Yeah, but
there's
even,
no way.
But beyond the documentary, though, how come none of this stuff has been talked about before?
I don't know. Like, I Googled it, right? Like, I was trying to find anybody, because I found it really quickly, Danny's dad's obituary, just because I had the Litton, keyword. It's like the first search result, I believe, on Google, his obituary. And so even when you read the Bow report, he's just a gynecologist. But he was like a leader, of the Catholic community here in I don't know, on the board of banks. I mean, that's strange. And so I was looking for anybody else I could, match up with what they've already found, and I didn't find anyone. I actually found Jeremy, the editor of Covert Action magazine, and wrote him a long comment on his Substack. And then he was like, hey, do you want to put this on our magazine? And I was like, sure. Because I didn't realize I don't know. The story's too wild, right?
And it doesn't get any. The more you dive into it, the more stranger it gets and confusing it gets, and less,
right?
Less reliable. You know what I mean? Like you can even trust what's out there.
And people say, like conspiracies are difficult because people can't keep secrets, but when it's so compartmentalized, like you have all these like clusters, and it's really strange. I mean, I really started appreciating Deanie's dad, like just scouring all the Washington papers archives looking for any mention of him, and they had an infant die because of a heart defect, and then the next year he is doing research on tech to monitor babies' fetal heartbeats, and it's just like, wow. And then his sister died Danny's sister died tragically in the Haight-Ashbury district. And then, his mom goes back to college, and she's working at a home for like runaway youth who, have challenging home lives for substance abuse issues. So I really developed like a real appreciation for his family. And sometimes, when you're in the Cold War and it's like us versus them, and people make a lot of compromise because they think they're on the winning side. But a lot of times we see the people that raise their head too high, get chopped.
We've been talking to Melanie L. Carlson. And it might be a good idea to take this and make a book out of this. Maybe it's time for another book.
Yeah.
A nice self-published book that has no.
I need money. It takes a long time to do all this, actually.
Yeah, I hear you, pal.
But I hope there's an audience for it. I assumed there would be, but I mean, if it's a new gold mine, then perhaps people just need to know that it exists.
So mx.defying, that's your Substack.
Yes.
And people can subscribe to that. Do you have like a GoFundMe kind of or a PayPal donation thing?
I have stuff, and I'll take assignments if anyone wants my help researching. Yeah, I love doing this. It's very fun, and I'm very good at it.
And then Twitter is mx__defying.
The 1_ for Twitter, 2 for TikTok.
Okay. And then Instagram is mx.defying.
_defying, yeah.
Okay, you gotta get that streamlined. Okay.
I tried. It's all available. What handles are available?
I hear you. Oh, Melanie L. Carlson, listen, I enjoyed this so much. This is an excellent work here. Go to Covert Action Magazine, MCA, shining the spotlight on the Octopus's Hollywood tentacles. But then again, much more content over at mx.defying on Substack, and many, many articles. And then there's a whole other world of stuff about the Britney Spears and conservatorships and all that kind of stuff too as well. So great content from our new friend MelanieLCarlson.com. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Oh, it was great stuff, man. Good night.
Yeah. Good night.